Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct today from Black Facts Headquarters Central. All right, let's get this show on the road. You know what time it is. You know what to do. Go ahead and give us a like and a thumbs up. And then if you would, go ahead and just subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel right down there below. Hit that button. Give it a lick, run right quick. Meanwhile, we'll go ahead and read our proverb for today. Proverb for today is, this one right here. Njia ya mwango ni fupi. Njia ya mwango ni fupi. Yep, that's it, all right. And that one means the path of a liar is short. The path of a liar is short. So you might get away with it for a while. However, njia ya mwango ni fupi. Okay, I love doing this. I feel more and more confident in using Kiswahili every day. And we're reading today about the story of Ona Judge, an enslaved African on the plantation of the man they say never told a lie. And that was the first lie. So let's see what else they have to say about Ona Judge. She's back at Mount Vernon, and they say that a ship sets in at dock on the Potomac River. The Potomac runs right by the back of the Washington estate. Actually, they might call that the front because you can see the docks from down there, and you can land and come right up the hill instead of having to take that rough ride on that road with all that dust. But this ship brought with it some unwanted cargo. That's how they put it. Unwanted cargo that is stowed away and was about to unleash the biggest panic the city had seen, and everyone would be affected. What are they talking about? Well, it turns out they're talking about none other than yellow fever. That's right, yellow fever. During the spring of 1793, Ona's time was consumed with all the social duties of the wife of the president, all the domestic duties that came with slavery. Whatever her wishes and dreams, Ona could not publicly pursue them. Her life was bent and shaped by the Washington's will. Yet it was at this moment that the stowaways from the West Indies arrived. Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are always a pain. This time they were actually deadly. The mosquitoes didn't care what color a person's skin was. They just did what mosquitoes always do: bite. Soon, men and women, black and white, old and young, rich and poor, began to get headaches, then chills, then fevers. Eventually, their organs failed. Death became the norm. Yellow fever was sweeping through the city. Everyone suffered. No one figured out it was the mosquitoes that were spreading the disease. Thousands of citizens fled. George and Martha ordered Ona and her fellow servants and slaves to pack up the household for a retreat to Mount Vernon. Wait a minute. Thought they were already at Mount Vernon. Weren't they at Mount Vernon already? Okay, so I guess they must have still been in Philadelphia then. Okay, I thought they had already gone back to Mount Vernon. Okay, so they were still in Philly. So they ordered them to pack up and head to the hills. These were the days before modern medicine was considered a stable science. There were some educated guesses and some supernatural theories about the cause of this plague. But in the end, that's all they were. Straight guesses. They didn't have a clue. Many people assumed that the sickness was caused by stale or smelly air. There were no sewage systems in the 1790s, and the summers in Philadelphia were notoriously hot. This did not help the afflicted people who were steaming from their fevers and vomiting from their infection. It wasn't until the first frost swept over Philadelphia in November that the mosquitoes died off. Between 4,000 and 5,000 white Philadelphians had died, as had 400 black residents. Tobias Lear's wife, Polly, was one of the dead. Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, and Richard Allen, the preacher, had both caught the disease but had managed to survive. Ona was not in Philly during the worst of the epidemic. She was with the rest of the household at Mount Vernon. If she had been there, she would have seen another example of how difficult it was to get white people and black people to live happily alongside one another. When the disease was striking everyone in its path, Dr. Benjamin Rush, the most well-known of all the doctors in Philly, came up with a hypothesis that people of African descent could not catch yellow fever. There was no basis for this theory, since indeed many black men and women in Philly had been killed by the disease. Perhaps a relatively small number of black deaths compared to the total number of people who died made this fact unknown to Dr. Rush. Whatever the reason, in 1793, Dr. Rush reached out to leaders in the free black community, asking for their help as nurses and grave diggers. People were getting sick all over the place. Dead bodies were piling up and decomposing. The free black leaders, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, heard Dr. Rush's plea, and they saw an opportunity to raise the status of free blacks in the city. If white people saw black men and women helping out during this horrible epidemic, these leaders reasoned, surely they would finally believe that this same community was worthy of freedom. Richard and Absalom also knew that people like Martha Washington had a stubborn belief in the negative stereotype of black people, that they were lazy, rebellious, unreasonable, etc. Richard and Absalom believed that helping out during the yellow fever epidemic was a chance to change their minds. They rushed to help and brought with them many other black citizens eager to pitch in. The entire effort was a catastrophe. Disease and death did not care what color skin a person had and struck blindly and mercilessly at everyone. Black people died of the disease at the same rate as white people. But just as black and white people were segregated in life, they were segregated in death. White bodies filled up white graves and black bodies filled up black graves at the same overwhelming pace. What was even worse was that during the panic of the disease, white people began to accuse black people of robbing dying men and looting abandoned homes. Oh, shucks, here we go. An opportunity to reduce racial tension between black and white Philadelphians was lost. Instead, the experience reminded free black servants and the enslaved that freedom, if and when it finally came, would not end years and years of racial violence, stereotypes, or wrong-headed hatred. When Ona returned to Philly with the Washingtons in late 1793, she would have walked among the wreckage of the city, noticing more than just grief in the air. She would have sensed that relations between blacks and whites had become even more hostile than they'd been when she had left. Soon, she would hear firsthand how soul-crushing it was to be accused of such shameful behavior when the free black community had genuinely wanted to help. Richard Allen and Absalom Jones were more than aggrieved, they were furious. The same Matthew Carey who had published Description of a Slave Ship and had printed a widely read pamphlet that accused black people of plundering white people's homes during the yellow fever epidemic. Richard and Absalom spent the next several months composing a response to Carey's destructive words. To those who keep slaves, and approved the practice, was printed in early 1794. In it, Richard campaigned not only for freedom for slaves, but for a stop to racial discrimination. If you love your children, if you love your country, if you love the God of love, clear your hands from slaves. Burden not your children or your country with them. Even in Philadelphia, the place, that's a quote, even in Philadelphia, the place that would become the guiding star of the abolition movement, Richard's plea did not always work. For some white folks, dark skin alone was reason to consider black people an inferior race. Evil for show. Even when black people offered up their lives to help whites, as they had during the yellow fever epidemic, they would still be rejected and scorned. This was a valuable lesson for the free black leaders like Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, but it was also a reminder to Ona herself that even if she somehow, some way eventually claimed her freedom, it wasn't a ticket to an automatically easier life. Freedom did not erase racism. In fact, it could make racism worse, if that is possible. Ona persisted despite mounting despair. In December 1794, she met with a personal tragedy. Austin, now in his mid-30s, was headed to see his wife Charlotte and their children at Mount Vernon. He often traveled alone during this journey from Philly to Virginia and had always arrived at his destination safely. Not this time. Austin attempted to cross a river in Harford County, Maryland. It may have been a storm or a rushing current or something else altogether, but soon a letter arrived in Philly stating that Austin was with great difficulty dragged out of the water and was likely to lose his life. He died shortly thereafter. Ona was about 21 when she received even more devastating news. In January 1795, her mother, Betty, had died. She had gotten sick in her late 50s, and a lifetime of enslavement coupled with poor living conditions, particularly in the winter when cold air would come straight through the walls of the shabby slave cabins, meant that she was especially susceptible to illness. While George Washington may have been sympathetic, as a practical matter, Betty's death saved him money. It cost money to shelter and feed and clothe elderly slaves who could no longer work. With her death, Betty had saved George this expense. Ona had no reason to look at her loss practically. Betty was the only parent she'd ever truly known. The death of Austin had been incredibly painful, and now her mama was gone. For Ona, it must have been one of the most crushing blows of her short life. Her trips to Mount Vernon would now be tinged with grief. Her life in Philly was irrevocably changed as the branches of her own family tree had been lopped off abruptly, leaving her basically alone. Philadelphia had much to commend itself over Mount Vernon, but as a freed preacher, Richard Allen said, quote, slavery is a bitter pill, end quote. Every life has ups and downs. Every life experiences sorrow. Disease can strike anyone, and death kills everyone. For someone like Ona, living in the biggest city in the country, the ups were never fully separated from fear. Every day, every second, Ona would have to worry that if she did something wrong, if she had perhaps cried over the death of her mama, instead of immediately serving Martha her tea, she might be sent away, back to Mount Vernon, or somewhere else. Worse yet, human nature was allowed no outlet in the emotional life of the enslaved. There was no acceptable place for the range of human emotions. If you were angry, swallow your rage. If you were afraid, pretend as if you were calm. If your mama or your brother had died a month apart, you had to go to work without tears, without a break, without comfort, like a robot. A slave's life was programmed. Service to your owners. You ain't nothing more than a human Roomba. Sleep, service, sleep, service. Repeat. The ups of a human life were limited to a trip to see a play, if you were lucky. An extra dress or pair of pants to wear, if you were lucky. A common law wife or a husband, if you were lucky. Ona was not lucky, but she was smart, and she was proud, and she was brave. It turned out that when things got even worse for her, these character traits would be enough. Okay, and there we have it. So, end of that chapter. We'll go on to the next chapter tomorrow night. We've got a good chance to finish reading this book. It'll be the first of many, or excuse me, yeah, it'll be the first of many books that we have read from that we would have finished, actually been able to finish the story. Yeah, oftentimes we do not get to finish the story, but this one, oh yeah, we're more than halfway through. Yeah, we're pretty near at the end. I think we might be able to finish this one, and I think you all will appreciate how it ends. I don't know how it ends, but however it ends, I think it will be much appreciated if we can get there. So we'll do our level best to make it all the way to the end. Tune in again tomorrow night. We'll be back with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Reading from the book, Never Caught, the story of Ona Judge, an enslaved African woman who escapes the clutches of George and Martha Washington. Be here or be square. Meanwhile, all you little children out there, it's time to lay your little head down on your little pillow on your little bed. Close those eyes and wait for that big old sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, that's when you know it's time for you to rise and shine and greet the day in a whole new way. You might even get up and be able to play, because tomorrow will be Sunday. Sunday, Sunday, oh Sunday, Sunday. Just like that. I would sing the rest of that song, but I'm not. I'm going to hold back. Hold back on the song. Meanwhile, peace out to everybody out there. Please don't forget to give us a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel, if you don't mind, because that's more than just a line. It's something we need you to do, just like when you go ahead and start drinking that wine. I know you like some wine. All right, Sydney, we're going to say good night right here, and we'll be back tomorrow.